All right, readers, and writers, we have been looking at our story mountain. We've been talking about how stories tend to go. I actually just had a really great conversation with Anna about this in her writing. Do you mind if I share a little bit about your story? We were talking about reaching the climax of her story, and we were saying reaching the climax is a lot like waiting for a pot of water to boil. Has anybody ever seen water go onto the stove?
I have that.
So you put the pot of water on, and then it sits there and does nothing for a while. You see the water, you're introduced to the water, right, gentlemen? You see the water, you're introduced to it, you turn the heat on, and then maybe you'll start to see tiny little, like, fizz bubbles, like teeny tiny little bubbles. So something's starting to happen. And then they get a little bit bigger, and then it boils a little bit, and then it's like all out boil. If you're boiling pasta, sometimes it spills over, right? I know I've done that a lot, and then I have to clean the stove afterwards. So Anna and I were talking about this, and we were comparing it to her story, where she's writing about her first dance recital. And she had this great opening where she gave us a sneak peek of I'm on stage, my knees are trembling, the curtain's about to open, and then she jumped into her story. And the way that she built to her climax, she has all of these like unfortunate events that are coming right after the other, where she got lost in the building, and then she wanted to get a t-shirt and it was like super expensive. She's got all these events that are building up to like something's gonna happen, something's gonna go wrong, and then we hit that climax, and we were trying to find ways to really make that climax pop. Today I want to teach you that as readers near the end of the story, as they reach that climax, we expect the tension to build to a boiling point. You don't put water on the stove to just sit there. You want it to boil. You want it to hit that point. So when this happens, we pay attention to how is the main character tested. Like, how is Anna being tested on that stage at her first dance recital? Or you may be thinking about how you're tested within your story. We notice how the character reacts. We think, why might this be important to the character's journey? So when we left off on chapter 23, things were starting to heat up. The bubbles are starting to form. Water's almost boiling. The thunderstorm began. Opal discovered that Winn-Dixie was missing. And I'm thinking that this might be the start of the story's climax. So as I read, I'm going to read chapter 24. Will you start to notice how things are heating up for Opal and how she might be tested in this part of the story? So let's see if this is really our climax. So chapter 24, and we're almost done with the book here.
Once we're done, we'll watch the movie.
Yes,
Yay!
that is the plan. But we can't if we haven't finished the book. Chapter 24. Me and the preacher started walking and calling Winn-Dixie's name. I was glad it was raining so hard because it made it easy to cry. I cried and cried and cried, and the whole time I was calling for Winn-Dixie. Winn-Dixie, I screamed. Winn-Dixie, the preacher shouted. And then he whistled loud and long, but Winn-Dixie didn't show up. We walked all through downtown. We walked past the Dewberry's house and the Herman W. Block Memorial Library and Sweetie Pie's yellow house and Gertrude's Pets. We walked out to the Friendly Corners trailer park and looked underneath our trailer. We walked all the way out to the Open Arms Baptist Church of Naomi. We walked past the railroad tracks and right on down Highway 50. Cars were rushing past and their taillights glowed red like mean eyes staring at us. Daddy, I said. Daddy, what if he got run over? Opal, the preacher said, we can't worry about what might have happened. All we can do is keep looking. We walked and walked, and in my head, I started on a list of 10 things that I knew about Winn-Dixie. Things I could write on big old posters and put up around the neighborhood. Things that would help people look for him. Number 1 was that he had a pathological fear of thunderstorms. Number 2 was he liked to smile using all his teeth. Number 3 was he could run fast. Number 4 was that he snored. Number 5 was that he could catch mice without squishing them to death. Number 6 was he liked to meet people. Number 7 was he liked to eat peanut butter. Number 8 was he couldn't stand to be left alone. Number 9 was he liked to sit on couches and sleep in beds. Number 10 was he didn't mind going to church. I kept on going over and over the list in my head. I memorized it the same way I had memorized the list of 10 things about my mama. I memorized it so if I didn't find him, I would have some part of him to hold on to. But at the same time, I thought of something I had never thought of before, and that was that a list of things couldn't even begin to show somebody the real Winn-Dixie. Just like a list of 10 things couldn't ever get me to know my mama. And thinking about that made me cry even more. So I'm wondering, so far in this text, in this part of the climax, I'm thinking the water's boiling. I'm wondering, how is she being tested? Why might this moment be important to Opal's journey? I think it's cool how they brought it back to this list of 10 things and they're connecting it to her mom. But I am wondering, what will she do if she can't find him? I'm wondering if she loses him like she loses her mom. What will her life be like? Can she handle that? So all these questions are popping up for me because as the water's boiling, I'm thinking of the pasta adding it in it, and I'm thinking that it's going to overflow. I do know she's super brave, and I know she's opened up her heart for everyone. Maybe she's more prepared than she thinks she is because of the way that she's reacted in the past. But I'm also wondering, is this a test? Is this some sort of test for her? I don't know. But I'm feeling the water boiling at this point. Me and the preacher looked for a long time, and finally he said we had to quit. But Daddy, I said, Winn-Dixie's out there somewhere. We can't leave him. Opal, the preacher said, we have looked, and there's only so much looking we can do. I can't believe you're going to give up, I told him. India, Opal, the preacher said, rubbing his nose. Don't argue with me. I stood and stared at him. The rain had let up some. It was mostly a drizzle now. It's time to head back, the preacher said. No, I told him. You go ahead and go, but I'm going to keep on looking. Opal, the preacher said in a real soft voice. It's time to give up. You always give up, I shouted. You're always pulling your head inside your stupid old turtle shell. I bet you didn't even go out looking for my mama when she left. I bet you just let her run off too. Baby, the preacher said. I couldn't stop her. I tried. Don't you think I wanted her to stay too? Don't you think I miss her every day? He spread his arms out wide and then dropped them to his sides. I tried, he said. I tried. Then he did something I couldn't believe. He started to cry. The preacher was crying. His shoulders were moving up and down, and he was making snuffly noises. And don't believe that losing Winn-Dixie doesn't upset me as much as it does you, he said. I love that dog. I love him too. Daddy, I said. I went and wrapped my arms around his waist. He was crying so hard he was shaking. It's all right, I told him. It's okay. Shh, I said to him like he was a scared little kid. Everything will be okay. We stood there hugging and rocking back and forth, and after a while the preacher stopped shaking and I still held on to him. And I finally got the nerve to ask the question I wanted to ask. Do you think she's ever going to come back? I whispered. Is he talking about Winn-Dixie, or is she talking about who she's talking about? Her mom.
Winn-Dixie's
Yeah.
a boy.
Yeah, so that kind of gives the clue there. No, the preacher said. No, I do not. I've hoped and prayed and dreamed about it for years, but I don't think she'll ever come back. Gloria says that you can't hold on to anything, that you can only love what you've got while you've got it. She's right, the preacher said. Gloria Dump is right. I'm not ready to let Winn-Dixie go, I said. I had forgotten about him for a minute, with what thinking about Mama. We'll keep looking, said the preacher. The two of us will keep looking for him. But do you know what? I just realized something, India, Opal. When I told you your Mama took everything with her, I forgot one thing, one very important thing that she left behind. What? I asked. You, he said. Thank God your Mama left me you. And he hugged me tighter. I'm glad I've got you too, I told him, and I meant it. I took hold of his hand, and we started walking back into town, calling and whistling for Winn-Dixie the whole way. So, really quick, I'm not going to ask us to share, but I am going to ask us to turn and talk, and this timer will go off soon, and I'll have us off the carpet shortly after that. Turn and talk. What does this climax mean for Opal and her journey? What does it tell us about her as a person? How does she react to it? Turn and talk. Keep talking. I'm looking for students who are turning and facing each other and talking. Join a group of three here. Five, four, three, two, one. Class, class. Class, class. I did hear in some of the conversations as I was kind of just glancing over, I didn't get a chance to get up and talk with anybody, but I noticed that some of those conversations were using evidence from the text. Because anything that you say that Opal's doing or saying or how she's reacting, there is evidence from the text to support that. I feel like there's a lot of evidence to show that Opal is having a major breakthrough with her dad. She's had all of this built up negativity about how he's always hiding in his turtle shell, and she even yelled it during this part. If that beeping could stop, I'd appreciate it. Thank you. So I feel like she's having a big breakthrough, and there's a lot of evidence to support that. So as you continue reading today, in the books that you are reading as well, the authors often test the characters, especially as you reach the end of a story. As they approach the end of the story, be alert for those moments. What is my character facing? Why is this important? I'm not going to have you write anything because you may not be at the end of your story. But I want you to be thinking about it as you approach the end of your story. What is my character facing? Why is this important?